going to start recording now. So we're starting to record.
Yes, we
So we are live, I do believe. So a couple of people joining us now. So hi, everyone. I do believe you can all hear us. So if you can let us know in the chat if you do. I'm Emma and this is Christina. And we are here today to blab about customers and buying behavior. So Denise, are you in the house? Can you join us?
I'm really looking forward to
it. Yeah, I'm a bit nervous actually. If anybody can let us know if they can hear us actually in the chat, that would be great. Denise, you need to join the open seat. Oh, sound is good. That's great. Thank you so much. That's great. Okay, well, sure. Will we just get started while Denise is coming in? So welcome everybody to our second blab. We started last week, isn't that right, Christina? And we just thought we'd go for it and do a weekly blab, typically around business and marketing topics. So delighted to have you here. And hi, Kimberly. Hi, everyone. So let us know in the chat where you're all from. And again, I'm from Ireland, and I let this is Christina, and I let her introduce herself and let us know what she does as well.
Awesome. So I'm Christina Jones. I'm based in the UK, originally from a fairly rural part called Wales, which no one outside of the UK has ever heard of. So if you know where Wales is, type it in the chat box, because I'd be really surprised if you're not in the UK, that is. But I live just outside Bristol, which is a city about 2 hours north of London. It's, for me, perfect because it's the second biggest sort of tech centre outside of London in Europe. And yeah, so my day-to-day is spent online marketing. I'm probably a little bit unusual in that I run a digital marketing agency called Black Type Digital, but I've also got a physical product business. So hence why I was saying to Emma, I'm looking slightly bleary because we're coming to the end of the whole sort of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So I'll only be managing that for clients, but with 3 of our own e-commerce sites, it has been controlled chaos, probably describes this weekend. So that's me. So I can see Denise has entered, so I will hand over and let her introduce herself.
I was wondering, I was like, I could see that you were there, but you hadn't actually come in yet.
Yeah, and I can't hear you terribly well. The sound is very low on my machine, and I can't quite work out why. So do you want to just carry on whilst I just have a bit of a fiddle around with my computer and see if I can just get things a bit more sorted out?
No problem at all.
Well, I will extract more information from Emma for everyone who's listening. So, because I was thinking today that this is a really important topic that Emma's going to be talking about, and it's really her sort of area of expertise. And the danger is in a lot of businesses that you sort of dive straight into your sales and marketing, whether that be something traditional, sort of telesales or direct mail, or whether you're using all the sort of new social media. And it's very much focusing on tactics without always understanding the strategy behind it. And even understanding all the strategy that underpins your marketing won't do much good unless you know who your customer is. And that really informs everything. And hopefully Emma's going to talk loads about it, and I'm going to be scribbling notes furiously because, psychology fascinates me. Making people buy things, awesome. So
thank you for that, Christine. That's great. Just welcoming a few people there. Patrick, hi, and Karender. Welcome to the blab, and anybody else that's coming in there, just welcome. So I suppose, thank you, Christine, for introducing me there. I'm Emma Darcy from emmadmarketing.ie because I'm based in Ireland, in the south, in Tipperary. It's a long way to Tipperary, if anyone knows the song. And I suppose basically I have worked in retail in many different industries, the horse industry, agricultural industry, quite a long background, CV as long as your arm. And back in 2006, I went back and did a degree in business, and then I went on and did a master's in marketing. And throughout all this, I have been really, really interested in consumer psychology, as in like what Christina talks about. What drives people to buy? Why do we buy, say, a BMW? Why do we buy a Volkswagen? Why do we buy a Ford? Why do we buy certain clothes? You know, what is it that drives us to buy certain items? For example, if you look at a car, you know, typically it should get you from A to B, and hopefully from B to A, even more importantly. So what differentiates the different types of cars? Now, I know I'm not really, you can see I'm not very good at the sort of engineering side of it, but just typically from, if you just want to get from A to B, like what makes us buy a Mercedes or a BMW or any of the different brands. So I'm going to talk a little bit around that today, like consumer buying behavior, and just really flag up a little bit of what you can look out for in your own businesses, and hopefully that can help. So what I'm going to do is I actually did a blog post about it. I'm just going to put it in the chat, and you can have a read about it when you get a chance. And I'm just going to talk my way through it. And if anybody has any questions to ask in the chat, and equally Denise and Christine can stop me maybe at various points and ask me some different questions. As I said, I am hugely interested in this area. I'm looking at starting my PhD in this area as well. So I just read reams about it. And what I find actually through my work as business and marketing coach / consultant, that, you know, really like Christina says, you've got to understand your customers before you can kind of put a marketing strategy in place, before you can kind of decide on your marketing communications, because otherwise what you might be doing is you're perhaps on the wrong social media platform, or maybe you're not on the one that you need to be on. So really the core of any business is, first of all, understanding the product or the service that you have, and equally understanding the customers and who they are and what their wants and needs are. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing is going down. You can see the blog post there, and I'll just kind of go down through it so I don't lose my train of thought, which I tend to do. So I suppose the first thing to look at is what's your customer's personality traits? You know, just to look at simple things. Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Are people, you know, are your customers, are they pessimists? Are they realists? Are they logical? Are they creative people? And what I would tend to do is even just make an Excel sheet and start, you know, jotting down any current information that you have about your customers, and really start to think, you know, are they introverted? Are they pessimists? Are they realists? And what does that affect? What does that personality type affect, or how does that affect their buying behavior? And just to try and understand that. Are your customers risk takers? Or do they tend to go with the status quo? So these are the types of questions that you need to ask yourself, because a risk taker perhaps is somebody that might go bungee jumping, for example. I just thought of that earlier because I did skydiving when I was in New Zealand, and I like that sort of stuff. So I'm the type of person that I'll go skiing, or I'll try horse riding, or I'll try that sort of sport, for example. But other people are risk averse, so therefore they might go for maybe a walk in the park, or, you know, stuff like that. So, or in terms of the holidays that they would choose, it's hugely different maybe than somebody like me, where I kind of like those adrenaline type of activities. So if you understand that as a service provider, so if you're in the tourist industry, you need to understand what drives people to go on certain types of holidays. So just to start to think, you know, in that regard as to what's important, you know, to your customers, and how to understand their wants and needs. And what I typically tend to tell my clients to do is literally just write an Excel sheet, or get your word out, make a list of the current types of customers you have, and just literally just jot down the different personalities that they tend to have. And usually what you find is that there's actually quite a number of crossovers, where there tends to be a theme of types of people that typically come to your business, or typically use your service or product, whichever the case may be. Would you tend to find that, Christina? Do you have any kind of particular types of people that come to you? I know you're typically, or you've a lot of people in the horse industry, for example, will come to you, but any other types of people that will come to you typically?
I've certainly found the ones where you get the best results is definitely a sort of common denominator. And so for 2016, I'm really, really clear about the sorts of clients. And that's not just the sort of business type. At the moment, my sort of primary sort of marketing focus is within the horse industry as a niche. But within that, that's a massive, massive, for those of you who aren't familiar, global industry here in the UK that employs more people in farming. It's a bigger sport than cricket and rugby. Again, probably the Americans, that reference has gone straight over. Bigger than the English equivalent of American football. So it's big, but within that it's massively, massively diverse. So you've got everything from sort of one-man bands, the sort of service providers who might be riding teachers or dentists for horses, up to retailers, wholesalers, and then multinational, sort of $100 million businesses. So the sort of saying kind of horse industry. Although it sounds like a niche, it isn't in reality. So for me, it's very much identifying businesses that are the right sort of size to be able to afford the fees and then actually have the ability to implement. But there's also definitely a sort of type that really gels, sort of personality traits, people who are quite open-minded. It tends to be that in sort of age-wise, that a lot of the sort of senior decision makers I'd be working with would be sort of 40 upwards. So they're not sort of innately sort of digital children. All this digital stuff is new and to be honest, a little bit scary. So you've got to be fairly brave to be signing off perhaps some, really rejigging budgets. And so there's definitely a sort of person where I actually find it really difficult, and I've got loads of questions about this tonight, and I apologize in advance because I think they're really mean questions, and I was going to message you beforehand to say okay, but I didn't, so I'm going to set you on the spot here. Online businesses, so I think they're if you've got service businesses where you're seeing your customers a lot, I know we've got Marianne in the chat who's in the automotive industry. I've got clients and family there. So, you'll see you've got a waiting room full of customers. If you want to know who they are, you can just going to have like a sneaky look through the window and you can sort of do real life customer sort of research. But I'm intrigued by, I'm trying to think of businesses, not just e-commerce, that would not necessarily have a huge amount of interaction with customers. Might even be, say, kind of horse example, might be someone who produces, say, bedding for horses and it's delivered through a sort of distribution chain and they're more of a manufacturer. So how would you suggest people who, there might be people listening who are like, well, actually, I really have no idea where to start with this in terms of who my customers are. What do you do with people?
Well, it's a good question. I think what I find is that there is no one answer because every business is completely different, right? So it's about actually taking a step back and seeing what is the business you're in, who are your customers to date, and just even figuring out the types of people, like you're saying, that come to you. So if they're open-minded, if they're risk-averse, introverted, all that sort of thing. So a good example I could give is I did some work with the university to me locally, and they were asking me to help them with their MBA program. And the MBA program cost 27,000 euros, which is about, I think, $33,000. So it's quite a high cost, or a high investment for people. So the question is, where do you find these people? Where do you find somebody that has 27,000 in their back pocket? Of course, because not everybody's going to have that. And equally, it's quite specific in terms of the course. It's a 2-year part-time course. What does it do for them? There's all these questions that you've got to ask yourself, like in terms of your product or service. So when I spoke to the university, what I noticed was, first of all, there was two things. There was people that self-funded themselves. And that, for example, like 27,000 is a lot of money. So could they put a payment plan in place? It was something that the university hadn't looked at before, so they did. The second thing was a lot of companies actually fund people that are doing MBAs. So in actual fact, if you look at that situation, it's not just the company, not just people individually you're looking at, it's actually targeting certain companies who would like some of their employees to go and do an MBA. So, for example, in some companies, engineers typically would like to move up the career ladder, and typically, and I'm not sweeping generalizations here, but a lot of engineers typically don't have a good business background. They're very good on the technical side of things, and they may not be so good on the HR side of things or the financial aspect of running a business. And so oftentimes they will come and do an MBA, for example, and they want to upskill, but they may not realize, that they need these skills. So for this particular example, what we had to do was we had to run a series of ads on radio. We picked for example, a lot of business shows that were nationally based, like high-level business shows, so that wasn't just like your average sort of kind of radio station where they're playing loads of songs all the time. Like, these were quite in-depth programs. And we also did a thing where we ran it out over, say, Christmas, for example. So if you're looking at something like an MBA, and again, this is just an example for people, if somebody's thinking of doing an MBA or doing a particular course like that, it's a life-changing moment. You're investing a lot of time and energy and money into it. So you've really got to sit back and think about it. And a lot of the people would think about it in particular over Christmas, because you've got that downtime, to sit back and think. You're looking at the new year, you're looking at planning out your year in advance. And this course, for example, would start in September. So typically as well, to look at the type of person that would think of doing the MBA, and equally to look at, for example, the companies. So a lot of companies, if they're deciding on, where they're going to spend their budgets, typically that will be done by the end of February. So the onus was on the university to do a lot of their marketing prior to Christmas, over Christmas, and throughout January, in order that they would hit the actual companies that potentially could have their employees to do the MBA. So what I'm saying to you here is that if you're looking at different businesses, you've got to look at, what are the opportunities, to do even like a SWOT analysis, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, in terms of, here's the market at the moment. If you're looking at your example, Christina, in terms of bedding, horse bedding, well, what I would look at there is, where is the main population, where is the main sort of businesses for horses or for equine industry or for equine business, where are they based in the UK? So are they just, like, for example, Newmarket would be a very good area in the UK. So that's a really, really horsey area. So there's a proliferation of stud farms, of racing yards, of, just like your average individual person that has a horse, and they're all based in typically this kind of one area, say in Newmarket. And equally, I think across the UK, and indeed in Ireland and in other countries, if you look at equestrian or sporting activities, there tends to be pockets of them, based around different areas. So what I would tend to do is, if I was looking at a bedding company that you're talking about, I would look at the pockets of areas within the UK or within Ireland and see where, are these people situated, number one. The second thing is to look at, distribution, who can distribute for you, reach out to them, and look at seeing, can they deliver to these areas? So you're kind of doing a bit of market backwards. You're nearly going backwards to go forwards, if that makes any sense. But the first thing I would do is figure out, where are those customers potentially in terms of just population. And oftentimes, if you go to your national archives, like for example, we have the CSO.ie in Ireland. So it's like a national statistics service. I'm not sure what it is in the UK. Would you know what it is?
I think literally the Office of National Statistics.
Okay, yeah. So if you go to something like that, so the Office of National Statistics, be it in Ireland or in England or in the US or in Australia, and if you can get some really good statistics from there that will give you the population, sporting activities. They actually go quite in depth in terms of market research, that it's very up to date typically as well. And you can get a lot of insights there into just literally kind of different areas, different industries, whether people are educated, the kind of the average mean, the average, we'll say, household income, like all that sort of information. So really what you've got to do is actually get an overview, first of all, of the industry, and then kind of whittle it down. Does that make sense, Christina?
Yeah, I suppose it does. But even, when you were asking, I told you, sorry, that I was asking loads of hard questions tonight. When you were then saying about sort of like profiling them, whether they're introverted or extroverted or things like that, do you recommend people actually go out and sort of formally survey people?
Well, that can be quite.
If you're sort of.
That can be quite expensive, if you're going to do that. So I suppose you've got to be practical in some instances. So for example, I often do focus groups. So focus groups, then, if anybody isn't sure, is basically where you have up to about 10 people in a room. Usually they're people that are interested in your product or service typically, and you're just trying to get some feedback as to what they think potentially of your product or service. Or indeed what you could have, like for example, I did one last year, and it was a lady I was doing work for, and she just wrote a book. And it was a children's book. So she wanted to get a sense of, okay, what do people think of this children's book? And equally, what ideas would they have, or what would they like to see in future books. So for example, it was for language students. And so she was trying to see, so what she did was we put together a focus group, and we invited teachers to come to it. And there were primary school teachers, so it was teachers of children from like 4 up to 12. So we asked them from different areas to come. And what we did was, then we gave them the books. We asked them a series of questions as to what they thought of the current educational system in Ireland, kind of pre-set the questions, what they thought of the book, any suggestions that they had. So you get a lot of insights from a situation like that. And what we did actually as well is we recorded it. So when you record something like that, it can be very interesting, because even though you're taking notes throughout it, you may miss something. So if you record it, it's great to go back and listen, and actually listen to the language that the teachers were using in that instance. So for example, if you could afford to do that, you could even have a blab. You could invite people to a Skype. You could invite people, can you speak to them on the phone? What I did before was I actually just spoke to people on the phone, where I just literally, I targeted certain people that I knew were potentially interested in working with me, and also people that had worked with me. And I actually asked them, would you mind, an hour of your time, and I can ask you a series of questions. And I did that, and I reciprocated then by helping them with some of their marketing. And I got some really in-depth answers as to, what they thought about certain aspects of their businesses, where they needed help. And again, for products or services, you could do this as well. So it doesn't have to be expensive. You could as well, like you're saying, Christina, you could go out into the marketplace and just ask people on the street. The only thing about that is you're getting kind of random answers from, different people. You'd need to probably get quite a lot of answers from a cross section of people in different areas that can help you. Because the thing is, you've got to be strategic about this. You've got to think, okay, well, what's my product? What's my service? What's the best way of going about this? Do I need to go to the mall? Do I need to do this online? Where can I find these? And I suppose it's difficult because, every industry is different. So what I would do is, like, say in the instance of the horse betting, is literally go back to clients that you already have and ask them some questions, either in depth or even just a Q&A, on Facebook, for example, just to get a basic insight as well. So, and then what you've got to do is go back and look at the answers basically, and see what people are coming back to you with.
Awesome. I also think you're doing, which is what most people who are experts are, and they don't realize how good they are at stuff, because you mentioned that you were analyzing the language people were using. You were recording and then listening back. And tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that's where there's some of this deep magic going on.
Definitely. That's one of the biggest things actually, and I learned that very early on when I started doing market research, is that I, with the person's permission, if I was doing a phone call or I was doing a Skype, I'd ask people, can I record this? Is that okay? Or if I was meeting them on an individual setting, I'd bring a recorder with me, or you can use phones nowadays. And what you find is that when you ask questions, your future customers have, they phrase things in a particular way. So what you've got to do is understand their language, understand their pain, understand their needs and their wants. So for example, like, we all grow up in different areas, right? You might go to university, you may not, there's all these colloquialisms. I live in Ireland, you live in the UK. So there's certain ways that we have of expressing ourselves. And each individual person is obviously different. But what you find is, for example, if somebody's interested in sailing, or somebody's interested in horse riding, or somebody's interested in BMW cars, or whatever the case is, there's often a trend or a correlation between the type of language that that person uses. So if you look at the example of the car, for example, a lot of market research would suggest that if you buy a Mercedes, the idea of it is that you've made it. If you buy a BMW, you're on the way up. Okay, so if you look at somebody that's looking to buy a BMW, if you take that into consideration, it means they're very ambitious, right? So you would expect that the language that they would use would be quite robust, that it would be very, they'd be very focused on their work and very driven, that they would use a specific type of language. And so, for example, if you were looking to sell BMW cars, you would listen to the way that the person speaks and then reflect that back to them. So just let me say that again, because I did a lot of sales work over the years when I went back to college. And one of the things I learned was that people like those like them. Okay, I'll say that again. People like those like them. So in other words, when you meet somebody for the first time, you're kind of deciding, do you like them? We all do this sort of thing. And if they reflect you, you tend to like them. So for example, if you go on a sun holiday and you love sun holidays, and you meet other people, you typically really like the other people on the sun holiday because you feel like that, you feel like you know them already because they're very similar to you, right? Equally, if you go on a skiing holiday, that's quite a different type of person that would go on a skiing holiday to somebody that goes on a sun holiday. Because typically if you go on a sun holiday, you're looking to relax, you're looking to chill out, you're looking for the sun. Whereas if somebody goes on a skiing holiday, they're typically, looking for a bit of action. They're looking for a bit of fun. They're looking for exercise, being out in the fresh air. It's a very different type of person. So what I'd say to you is just to understand. And so if you're selling, for example, a ski holiday, or you're selling a sun holiday, you would use very different language. So kind of go back to your question is basically reflect back the language that your customers say to you. Really, that's what I'm saying. And to use it in your marketing material. So if somebody was saying there's a lack of something in their lives, or they're saying that they need certain things, or, you'll notice it's hard to describe, but you'll notice certain things that they will say, and often they'll repeat them throughout your interview with them. So they'll probably repeat something that's very important to them, say 3 or 4 times. And if you go back over what they've said and highlight it and make a note of it, you can then understand that actually there's something here that you didn't consider to be important, but that your customers actually do. And it's actually just through this research that you actually gain a lot of knowledge about your customers. And that is really important and often overlooked, because in our drive to get business, in our drive to get our marketing out there, in our drive to, put ourselves out on social media, we forget to roll back sometimes and look and think, what do our customers want? What do they need? And it's very important to do that. Does that help, Christina, or am I rambling here?
No, I think that's really good, and I think it's actually really easy to forget to kind of switch out of sort of broadcast mode into listen. And sort of reflect back. So what would you then suggest for people who are like startups and don't have any customers to survey? So, and that's normally, it's actually probably a bit of a mistake that most businesses make, which is what we were talking about last week, is that when you're planning a sort of new venture, there's a lot of time, hopefully, spent on planning. And then once you sort of launch into business or a new project, you're so busy doing all the, all the kind of business stuff that you forget to look back. And for me, this year's been a really big learning curve to spend that sort of balance. Like this weekend, even though it's been, it's kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I'm also conscious that we're now 30 days away from 2016 and needing to nail plans for that, and, spending time reflecting and whatnot. So, because you can kind of lose track of it as a kind of existing business owner. But for startups, where it's so important they nail who their customer is to have any chance of survival, and the stats for like new business survival after a year and after 3 years are terrible. And so it's that, most people, you've got to get customers through the door really quickly. So would you sort of have exactly the same advice for startups? What would you suggest they do in terms of, they don't actually have any customers to survey. So what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, it's a great question, Christina. And of course, it's hard, isn't it? Because you start off and of course you have no customers, so who can you ask? So you have to get a little bit creative. So what I would suggest is even go on to, like, say, whatever your business is, go on to google.com and /trends, and you can look at trends in the marketplace. You can go on to buzzsumo.com as well. There's a couple of websites basically whereby you can go there and you can look at kind of very obvious trends that are in the marketplace right now. So for example, if you're looking at a new product or a new service, to go back to these trends and see, does your product or does your service fit into the overall trends that are very popular right now? And that will help to give you a sense of whether there is a demand for your particular product or service. So for example, I said like google.com /trends, BuzzSumo, you can go to Amazon. So if you've got a product or service that you believe is really, that is really a need for it, if you go, sorry, I've lost my thought there, my train of thought there. what was I saying? Sorry, my brain has gone
dead.
dead.
If you were diving into Amazon and you're in the sort of researching, trying to find wants and needs.
Yeah, if you're looking at that, you can find books that typically in every, there's a book for everything, right? So if you look on search on Amazon and look at the reviews, if you look at the reviews of a particular book, so if you're in the tourist industry, if you're in the horse industry, if you're in the coaching industry, if it's a product-based business, whatever it is, you can do some market research there. So what I'm saying is to look at market research that's already available in the marketplace. And what that does is that it helps to validate what you've already know. Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, in your heart that there's a demand there. From speaking to people on the ground that there's a demand for your product or service. But in order to broaden that out, you need to look a bit further and to look at these trends in the marketplace kind of more in a more wider context. And often as well, in each particular industry, there's usually like a governing body, for example. And often they will release kind of market research every year around that particular topic that can be really beneficial to you, and it can help you to understand your customers and understand their needs, or indeed to identify a gap in the market whereby there's already products and services supporting people up to 90%, but perhaps there's a glaring big hole that nobody else has identified, but maybe that you can. So like, for example, I know in the tourist industry, I've done a lot of work around that. And I know in Ireland, and again, in every country, there'll be a variety of bodies, of institutes that will write market research around this topic. And it's up to the individual business owner to go and do a little of research themselves and ask the questions, where can I find this market research? Go to universities even and ask them, have you any market research on X, Y, and Z? And typically there will be market research there available to you. What you've got to do then is read down through it, start to simulate kind of what that market is like, and then kind of put it towards your business and identify, like, is there actually a demand for this product or service? And that would really help. And that's just really to get you started. And that will help you as well in terms of the language that you can expect to be seen, particularly if you read the books. If you look at the reviews, even the reviews themselves can actually really highlight the type of language, like what people's expectations are, if they like the book, if they didn't like the book. And again, the language that they use as they write that review can be very revealing as well. So that's typically kind of market research that you would use. If you have lots of money, you can get market research done for you, but that can be quite expensive. So if you can't get that done, what I would suggest is literally to go on, and not just go on Google, because really just Googling isn't enough. It has to be very valid sources. If you go to Wikipedia, that's the worst place ever to do your market research. Please don't do it there, because you have to have valid sources, be it university sources or a governing body, like a government body that has written really good research about something. And they will tell you things, for example, like the birth rate is increasing year on year, or indeed it's decreasing. It'll give you a lot of information there that will help you to identify whether there is actually a market for your product or service. And I suppose really to identify then as well, things like disposable income potentially, and all that. So you kind of have to flesh it out a bit. That's your starting point. I'm afraid, and you still have a bit more work to do in terms of figuring out again, not just their personality types, but who are they, where are they based, all the traditional sort of market research, their age group, to identify as well. And one of the things I'd suggest to people, particularly with age group, I often come across clients and they like, what's their age, your client's age group, and they're like, oh, I think 15 to 40 or 15 to 50. And I mean, somebody that's 15, 20, sort of 22, 23 is in a very different place, like a life space, than somebody that's 30 or 40 or 50. So even though you could be really open-minded and really into ski holidays or whatever it is, when you're 20, you're in a very different space than when you're 30 or when you're 35 or when you're 40 or when you're 45. If you look at somebody in their 30s, if they have a mortgage, for example, they may not have a high disposable income, whereas somebody that's in their 40s or 50s may have a higher disposable income. So, even just to look at that, because oftentimes people focus on the 20 to 40-year-olds, and sometimes they're the worst market because, they've got such high debt, so just to look at that in terms of, helping people as well. We have Marianne coming in there. Just hang on a second, Marianne. Marianne, do you want to come back in again? Sorry, I wasn't quick enough to let you in. Does that help, Christina?
Awesome. Yeah, it does. And actually, just while we're getting Marianne on the call, I just wanted to mention, because it's something I never knew you could do. I was at the retail conference down in London back in September, and there was a lady who was there who was asking, it's actually from academia, presenting some fairly, to my mind, quite dry research about retail science. But she was saying that they're really struggling, that academics really, really want people from industry to approach them with research ideas. And I thought that was great, because like you say, market research can be really expensive. And sort of unleashing, and this lady is sort of, kind of renowned as probably the top academic in the world of sort of retail science in the UK. And if she was in private consulting, it would probably cost you an awful lot of money to hire her for the day. But instead, you could get her working on your particular problem for months at a time. So I will leave that there, and let Marianne talk. So it's so great to meet you kind of face to face.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I can't hear anybody very well. So if you could all speak up, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Sorry, Denise.
Well, thank you, Christina and Emma and Denise, for doing this. This is a great topic. My question is, I feel a very niche market. I'm automotive repair. So when I'm dealing with marketers, a lot of times I feel like I get clumped in with some of the same needs or issues that a general automotive repair shop would have. They see their customers, their clients much more often for a lot of maintenance type work, and they build those relationships. My customers, although I have my regular customers, and we do get a lot of referrals from previous customers and general repair shops and businesses, but that customer that finds me, I find is in a more of an overwhelmed, very frustrated situation, because their main fear is that they have a major repair, a major need with their vehicle. So that's very different than saying, I think I need to get my oil changed on my car. So it's a different mindset. Sure. So that know, like, and trust, if you really haven't been able to build a relationship with that customer, my question is marketing, I call it educational marketing, so that you're giving them a lot of really good information so that they're empowered to make good decisions, and they're not going to throw good money after bad, so to speak, and they want to make informed decisions. So that's the goal. But how do you do that when they're not just casually going online and, maybe deciding on a vacation? It's something they want to do, they're excited about, but they find out they have something wrong with their vehicle, and it's like, oh no, I don't want to spend any money on my vehicle, that type of a thing. That's the part that I struggle with.
Okay. Can I just ask you, so when somebody comes to you, so say, for example, I have something wrong with my car, and I'm touching wood here that I don't, so basically, what's the typical route that people find you? Is it typically, say, through Facebook, through social media, or is it typically I just Google you and I will find you? How do people typically come to you or find you?
A lot of people would Google us. We do marketing, so they would find us through ads. Also referrals. Referrals are big. Previous customers or other local businesses or repair shops in the area that don't specialize in transmission work. But yeah, that's how mainly they would find us.
And just as well, just excuse my ignorance, what exactly is transmission work?
Well, the two probably major components in your vehicle are the engine or the motor, what people would say motor, and the transmission. Those are probably the two major components in the vehicle that people would get nervous if they found out that they had a major engine or a major transmission issue.
I'm just going to dive in and give you some American to English gearbox. Gearbox.
Standard,
yeah.
Sorry, that's the cultural stuff.
Can I just ask you, Marianne? Is it normal? Is it normal in the US to have a business focused on solely on transmission? Because I don't think here in the UK we would do that, would we?
No,
because I'm just thinking, if I was, I wouldn't even know what you were.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know if that's just a UK thing.
There are a lot of people that focus on all automotive repair. Transmission is definitely a specialty, but we've been here for 16 years and it's served us well. It is a specialty item as far as a lot of people don't know what's involved, how important it is maintenance wise. I guess it's not something that people are really told much about even when they purchase a car. So they really wouldn't know about it, but we're here to educate them so that they do the maintenance and they don't have the major problems. But it's basically the people who are stuck, you know, on the side of the road, those type of situations where it's very overwhelming and frustrating. And when you're overwhelmed, that's a really difficult time to try to make a decision.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think it's yeah, I was really, really relieved when my brother went into the automotive industry, because it meant that I didn't have to take my cars relentlessly to strange garages. And at one stage I moved quite a lot over a sort of 5 to 6 year period where nothing sort of major, perhaps from one side of the city to the other, but enough that you needed things like, you know, a new garage. And I've got to say, and it's something I'm battling a little bit actually with some automotive clients at the moment over their marketing, because the sort of car industry is massively sexist. And there's this sort of perception that girls don't know much about cars at all. And then it can be taken as an opportunity to be to really rip you off with the bills. And probably if you're, actually now I live in the countryside, probably not so much, but when I lived in the city and always had really nice nails and be turning up wearing high heels, and they would just talk such basically bullshit. And because the sort of half of my family love cars, you know, I drive horse lorries and whatnot, so I'm probably more sort of car practical than your average girl. And so you know that they're just giving you some claptrap. And say, you know, I take that off the bill because, you know, I never agreed to it. I'm not paying for it. But I always hated having to have anything to do with cars, because you just felt that you were going to get belittled, patronized, and ripped off. And I think the fact that you're a female face of your such a strong sort of marketing point. Because also I think women do empathy better, and like you say, it's where you're sat on you'd be on the hard shoulder of the motorway, sat there where never a gearbox, not yet, but where an entire engine's just blown up in a truck, and you're like, okay, you know, this is a 4-figure bill, I'm stranded. You know, it's not a good feeling. And do you tend to get them people picking up the phone to you at that point?
A lot of people will do that. And Christina, you hit the nail on the head when you said that description that you just said is so typical. That's exactly. See, I never had that fear because a lot of people I knew were in the industry, and they were, you know, good people in the industry doing a lot for their communities, helping customers. You know, if somebody was stuck, they stayed open, they didn't close, they got them back on the road, all of those good things. And then when I got involved in my business with my husband and joined so many trade associations, I started meeting people all over the country that were like-minded and wanted to do the right things for the right reason, you know, for people to actually help their local community. So, but that perception is so strong. And when they come into our shop and they meet us, it's, oh, wow, you know, that you can see that fear goes away because we're explaining to them exactly what it is that's going on. There may be repair options. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily major. That's what a lot of people assume. But my question really is more, we believe that we have to really address and know that our customers, many of them are in that feeling, that state. So that know, like, and trust, we have to reach out at every contact point with them and build that. from phone call, from the email, from when we're going to call them back. We make sure we are going to call them back when we say we're going to call them back. Listen to them, find out what their concerns are. If it's a mom and at 3 o'clock she needs to pick up her kids, she can't find out at 5 o'clock that her car is not ready. She needs to know before then. So everything that Emma was saying about addressing those customer concerns and knowing what's important to them, we find that really does work. I was just wondering if there was anything that you could tell me as far as those, when a person is in that overwhelm. I just feel like our focus is to educate them, give them the facts, because they're worrying and their mind is going, a mile a minute, and they're thinking the worst all the time. And it's like, cars can be fixed. We can work through this with you, and give them all the information that they need and find out what it is they need. But we can give them all the information so that they can make an informed decision. But I think beyond, if they have a good experience with us, it goes beyond our shop. It also helps the professionalism in the industry, because then when they do, they walk away thinking, well, you know what, maybe they aren't all bad.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two parts to your business in a way. There's part of it is educating people as a preventative measure as to how they can stop this. I actually had this exact problem last year where I was driving my other half's car, and he does have an automatic, which we don't actually normally have in Ireland. And I managed to break the transmission or the gearbox and I was not very popular, I can tell you. So I can totally understand like the situation. And it's like, who do you call? Like you're saying, you Google it. I suppose one thing I'd say to you is, like you're saying, educating people is very important. You can educate people in two ways. You can educate them online through blogging, through your social media, in terms of making people aware of what they can do to prevent these issues. My partner is very into cars. However, I am not, so I don't understand the preventative measures. So for me, as a woman in particular, like Christina saying, I know nothing about cars, but I know quite often when I do go to a car dealership, they are fleecing me in one way or another. And because I don't know any different, I can't say otherwise. So I think you have a unique opportunity there, particularly as a woman within the industry, and if there's other female employees there as well, to be able to just allay people's fears, to educate them, to explain to them, look, it's not so bad. We can do X, Y, and Z for you, when they're in the situation. Prior to that, if you have a series of blogs, we'll say, or, videos or whatever content marketing strategy that you have already on your website. So if I am in that situation like I was last year, and I'm Googling and I'm like, how am I going to move this car? Because I was literally blocking like the entire mall. I reversed back and I couldn't go forward. And I was in Tesco's, ladies who would understand in the UK, and I literally was blocking everyone, and you could tell they were like, who's the woman with the blonde hair that can't drive her car? I was like Googling, who is this, stressed, to the last. But if I was to go to your website and I saw a series of articles potentially explaining it, I think that would allay my fears, that I would be more inclined to ring your service over others, because I think most car dealerships would just be about the cars, about ring us. It's very basic contact information. Whereas I think if I saw something like the blog post, like videos or whatever content marketing that you have, I would be more likely to ring you on the basis that I would feel you would be more honest with me, you'd be more open with me. And I think somebody had posted in the chat there, Shannon. Shannon was asking actually where you're based, Marianne, so you might tell Shannon where you're based.
We're in Connecticut.
In Connecticut
in the US.
Can I just come in here? Because I had a problem recently with my car, and for exactly the same reasons that you're talking about, I was I didn't have a mechanic to go straight to. And so what I did, which I think is what most people will do, is go to friends that I knew I could really trust their judgment for a recommendation. So that was the first thing that I did. If I hadn't had that network to go to, then I would have been looking on Google to see what recommendations a business had and what kind of testimonials and what kind of social proof there is around. So I personally wouldn't be too interested in the testimonials that they put up in on their website. I'd be looking for other forms of social proof that are independently verifiable. If I had to find a mechanic. So I think that in terms of your marketing, that having those independent forms of social proof is really, really important. But also in terms of the communication, what we've been talking about here is information, and communication is also works on two other levels in terms of building know, like, and trust. So, which is your voice and your body language. And I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but basically the words that people hear make up a very, very small percentage of their decision making, and it's a sort of split between the voice and the body language that actually makes people decide whether or not they like and trust you, rather than the actual content. So I think my point is not to get too hung up in your instance with the content, because it's actually far more important about how it's conveyed and communicated with to people, because that it's those two factors that people use their intuition with to make judgments. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Well, that goes back to the whole, it's reflecting back to them what they want to hear. It's that whole thing of, like I was saying earlier with the sales, people like those like them. So you're kind of reflecting back to them, kind of that you can help them with their worries, you can help them with your concerns, that they're going to trust you because you're being honest with them, you're explaining to them what it is they need to know. And I think that's really important, because particularly in the industry that you're in, here in Ireland in any case, it is very masculine. It is very much, you feel like you're being done. Even if you're not being done, you still feel like you're being done. Right. Because there, over the years, it has happened where women in particular have been, that they've been overcharged for something and they shouldn't have been, So I think if you approach it in a way where you're being open, if you're looking at it a way where you're, even your onboarding process, you spoke about the experience, which is great. So it means that when if I do ring you and I'm distressed, that you're kind of nearly calming me down. You're like, okay, let's, what can we do? What's the matter? You're kind of talking me through it. And I think, people would appreciate that. They'll appreciate your knowledge. They'll appreciate the fact that you care. Like, that whole experience is really important. And I think even when somebody is in that situation, they're probably not thinking so clearly, that afterwards they would be very appreciative of the fact that, you did come out and help them, that you did offer good advice, or sometimes even to offer them alternatives, to say that you can do this or you can do this, that, that it's not that you have to come with us. Like, I remember once, breaking down in a car, and this guy said I had to come to his garage and it was like 50 miles away. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to pay the towing charges to go 50 miles away. Why would I do that? Like, that does not make sense. There's one like 5 minutes up the road, So, I think if you're helpful, if you're open, if you're, telling people how it is, and again, even about the, your body language, like Denise says, is so important, because Shannon has put there, it's 80% non-verbal in terms of, your whole demeanor, that, people are picking up those cues, and people will trust you. If they feel like you're looking them straight in the eye and you're saying, hey, look, we can do this. This is wrong. This is wrong. It just takes it, whatever it is that you have to do in order to help them to put them back on the road. And to me, if I'm in that situation, I just want to know, when can I be back on the road? When can I collect my daughter? And what's it going to charge me, obviously, for that? And I think part of that then as well is maybe educating them so that it doesn't happen like that again. So, for example, what can they be doing in the meantime with their next car or with this car, that it can, that it's not just happening again, and educating people. I think that's an important part as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that video might be a good way to do this, because then people kind of get to know you, and tips things that they could know what to ask when they go to a shop, whether it's because we're in a small local area, so my reach is going to be small, but this could help anyone near and far. And basically just telling people, giving people the same advice that you're going to give to your family, friends, if they were to call you. That's basically the way we do it.
I think that's a great idea, but I'd also be really, really tempted. So this is the digital obsessive suggesting something completely undigital, which is I had actually a slightly strange, I think probably the equivalent would be the kind of final couple of years of like high school in America. And we had something, it was a boarding school and where you had Saturday lessons, but once you're in the final 2 years, you didn't have lessons on a Saturday. You had something called widening horizons, which depending on which teacher was in charge of it, I remember one week we had a wedding dress designer, which got the sort of 17-year-old feminist in me enraged that it was kind of like, no, you don't need to go to university, just marry well. But then we also had things, we were all taught how to wire plugs and change tires. And boy, am I glad that I know how to change a tire when you're in some really rural part of the country with no mobile phone reception and that kind of thing. And I'd be really tempted, there'll be a lot of, what age can people drive in Connecticut?
They can drive at 16. But most of my customers are in their 30s. They're working. Most of my customers are in their 30s and up. Usually if you get a college student that comes in, their parents are helping them, of course. They're
Well, I'd be really tempted as a sort of community sort of led sort of initiative, just put on some sort of kind of car maintenance for girls sort of class, and partly because it's a little bit sneaky. You're doing it because you're a really nice person, but also all those 16-year-olds have got parents and grandparents who've got cars.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, so in terms of sort of a reputation locally,
go ahead.
Yeah, and then. Yeah, so you've got them in. You've taught them some really, really valuable life skills. I don't think you can teach them to strip down a transmission in a morning, but you certainly teach them, how to change a tire. Just really basic stuff like oil changes, how to know if you need to do it, how to change perhaps the bulbs in your, in lights, and some sort of like mechanic 101. And then, you can generate PR off it in the local papers, make sure that you send them a press release or perhaps about the event and saying you're having an open morning. And that, it's really unusual to have female management in a garage. That's a really, it's a unique thing about your business. You're getting the community in, and when they're actually in a really non-stressed, they're, if you're just learning about changing a tire in a garage, it's actually a bit of fun. They probably put some overalls on and gloves, and they're just, they're kind of getting into it, and they're engaging with you in a really, really relaxed, kind of fun way.
Well, it's empowering.
Totally unthreatened, so that when they have that disaster 3 years down the line or 3 months or something, the first garage they're going to think of is you. And they're going to tell, they'll be like, guess what? Oh, they'll, and especially actually if you get 16-year-olds in, they will spend the entire time doing social media for you, because they're going to be on Instagram, Snapchat, and probably not actually, but they will be get 20 teenagers in your shop, and that's your social media done for them.
Well, thank you.
So that would be my take.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Before I.
I've got a story of a business. It was a driving school, so it might be applicable for you in the context of the ideas that Christina was sharing. So it was a driving school over here in London that was very, very close to going out of business, and I'm not quite sure how he came to this idea, the owner, but he started targeting giving driving lessons to 17-year-olds as they were getting their first license and so on. And what he did with their permission was, as soon as they passed their driving test, and I guess they must have got the certificate straight away or something straight away, he asked them if they wanted a photo for their Facebook page at the time. This was pre-Instagram. And so of course he made sure that they did the photo in front of his car with his kind of logo and everything on the top, so it was kind of full visual of his business. And then these teenagers then posted it to their Facebook accounts, and then of course what happened was that their friends saw that and then wanted to go to him for their driving lessons, and so it then kind of all spiraled from there on, and he ended up with a really amazing business. And so you could do the same thing with people coming to those kind of workshops and so on, is to see if they would be up for having a photo taken of them, doing an oil change, or doing something that they post on their Facebook feed, because that will help to create a bit of a viral effect and get the word spread around about your business for free.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. We do community service events at our shop, but I don't think I've publicized them as much as they were going on, or the people that had come. So that's a great idea to do.
So it would be getting them to use, like, to take a photo on their camera, so which they then post to their social media channels, and it will get the word out that way about what you're doing, and for completely for free. Right.
Well, yeah, you've been really helpful.
There's no problem. And actually, just a couple of things there just before you go, because I did some work previously with the garage as it happened, and they pursued the whole female side and did kind of what Christina is talking about, which is really interesting, where they actually did get in some women, and they got them in the overalls, which was kind of a bit hilarious, took some pictures of them, being shown how to see what, underneath of the hood and what to do. They had a couple of guys obviously showing them what to do, and they did put it up on social media. But equally, quite smartly, actually, what they did as well was they hired a general manager that was female. And that really had a ripple effect, because what that did was she became very involved in networking in female groups in the area. So very smartly, what she did was she offered a 10% discount to any female drivers when they came in to have their car serviced. And what that did was, because when you come in, of course, you say the car service is $150 or whatever it is. But oftentimes, as you know, there's an upsell to other things, we'll say, when they get in there. So they were getting that upsell effect when they went in. So I just thought it was really smart. And equally what they were doing as well, which is quite nice, is they were giving out, like, those little things of windscreen wiper, or, these little titchy little sort of something to bring with you. So a lot of women in particular would appreciate, or even just people in general, appreciate if you're giving them something that probably doesn't cost you a whole pile. And in particular, if somebody's come in where they are distressed, or, they've been through that whole experience where, their car is broken down, it is nice maybe that they're going away with something that they feel they've got something slightly extra. It doesn't cost you a whole pile, and there's that feel-good factor about it as well. I also know some other people, again, what they would have done is, like the idea Denise has, which is great, is to get the younger people in as they're learning to drive, and to teach them, and even have an open morning or an open day where you can educate them on, kind of what to do if you break down, what you do, also the preventative measures in terms of transmission, and maybe to bring along their moms and dads in terms of educating them too. I mean, if you look at it in terms of the cost or the expense of it happening, and then offset that against whatever you would charge them, say, for a morning for 2 or 3 hours, to show them how to prevent it. And also there's that fun aspect, like Christina is saying, because you don't normally get into overalls and figure out how to do this stuff. So, and I think as well, if you look at Periscope, you could do like a Periscope on it. You can save that to your phone. You could upload it to YouTube, and that's educational for other people, and it shows the fun and how you're helping people. You could also do something for charity as well, in terms of, you do a morning where you're helping a lot of people, even even to help older people perhaps over a certain age who perhaps aren't as au fait with cars as well. Bring them in, show them, give them some tea and coffee, some biscuits, show them how to do some stuff and show the preventative measures, and just get it across to people that there is a way of preventing this. And I think they would appreciate your honesty, and they would appreciate the fact that you're trying to help them. You'll get fantastic referrals from it, and the PR will be absolutely amazing as well. And I think last week as well, we were talking about plumbers. He was talking about having plumbers doing a periscope on themselves. But if you've got some good looking mechanics, why not have a think about that as well? So, but I think they've got to be personable. They've got to be personable and stuff, and be able to come across really well. I think Emma in the chat was mentioning even a podcast, which is a really good idea as well, like in terms of, again, just educating people. The only difficulty is obviously you can't really show them maybe perhaps in that, but again, just helping people. It's all about helping people. And if you're seen, like it's that whole thing, isn't it? If you're seen to help people, they're more likely to know, trust, and like you, or want to know you, want to trust you, want to like you, and are more likely to come to you because of that. So I mean, look, you seem to really know your customers, so really it's just about probably just adding on more to what you're doing, Marianne, from what you've said.
Like I said, I don't think I really publicized the things that we're doing, because we do go out and speak at schools and different centers, and I've done maintenance talks, car care talks on different occasions, but I really haven't put it out there. And the charities that we work with, I really haven't publicized it enough. So I think that's something I really need to work on. But the goal is, I mean, you all really said it so well. That's really the goal. For me, it's especially women, because I don't want any woman to ever walk into any shop and feel, overwhelmed or taken advantage of. I want them to feel, empowered. I mean, let's face it, we're all doing so much. And I tell them all the time, you're bright, you're capable of making these decisions. It's just that you need the facts. And even if it's outside sources, other than us saying it, there's a lot of trade industry publications. So using that material as well is also really good, just to educate people. So it's not directly coming from us. It's also coming from those third parties, credible sources. But I thank you so much. There may be other people. I don't want to take all of your time up.
Actually, before you go, there's Shannon has some good ideas there. She's saying, how about the unhandy man special?
There you go.
Yeah, I was going to say there's been some really, really good suggestions in the comments while you've been talking. And not to completely sort of diverge off onto another subject, but a really interesting one from Dot Rep who pointed out that, again, actually, his me being an opposite, the kind of flip of the sexist stereotype, that there are men who also don't feel comfortable around cars. And that's probably actually an even harder thing to fess up, because you get the kind of stereotype of, I'm going to offend Emma now, ditzy blonde who's kind of staring at a car, just, hoping so. Yeah, kind of, I'm going to say it.
They've become so much more complex over the years. Yeah, that's what it is. A lot of people don't feel comfortable anymore. But thank you again for everything, and I'll read the comments. Thanks for everyone. Everyone.
Marianne. Thanks for joining in the conversation.
Great to have you here, Marianne.
Bye. Oh, that's really interesting. It's amazing, isn't it? Every industry is so different. There's so much opportunity, isn't there? Between like all the things you can do. Okay, what time are we? We're just past 10. Is there any particular points that you'd like me to cover, ladies, or have you any thoughts at this point? Or
probably what if you had to kind of sum up that if you could only give 60 seconds of advice on this topic, what would you say?
Oh my God.
That's a really rotten question, Christine.
My PhD supervisor would have a stroke if they heard that. But anyway,
sorry, your decade of studies, just give me say digital marketer, 140 characters, 60 seconds.
Well, look, I think, it's really important, like Marianne was saying, you've got to understand your customers. And I think a lot of people, business owners and entrepreneurs like Marianne, actually do to a large extent, but they've got to highlight what they do already. She was saying she wasn't talking about the PR work, that how she was helping people, going out to schools. So look at what's the information you have already. And like I was saying earlier, look at the market research that's already available. Like Christina was saying, and I was saying earlier, go to universities. They are delighted, believe me, to do market research for you because they're looking for live candidates to work on. They're looking for you. So put yourself forward. They can be very helpful. They can often be like The Apprentice, or where they might run with a project or do some market research for you. But I think overall, we probably already know quite a bit about our customers. The thing is to sit down and actually evaluate it. I think you made an important point there earlier, Christine, is actually taking that time, because we can all get very stuck in the operational side of our businesses, and you actually inherently know some of the things about your customers. But I think sometimes you've just got to take that time out, not just for your finances, not just for doing your marketing strategy, but equally just to understand your customer, to sit back, actually write down, actually jot down some notes, see if there's any common characteristics among your customers to understand, are they outgoing, are they introverted, what's driving them towards you, how do they identify with your business, what's your brand, what do people feel when they come to you, what do they feel when they leave you? That's another important point as well. So it's that whole onboarding process, what they feel before they come to you, what do they feel after they've worked with you, and for you to understand that. So I think overall, we just have to, it's that whole thing of 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's about listening to people, listening to the language that they're using. That's really important. And I keep saying to write it down, but actually it's really important because before I'd have it all up here, I'd be like, oh yeah, I know what they need and everything like that. And we can all be a bit, we know what our customers need. But actually sometimes if you listen to them, if you do record them, or if you just jot down the sayings that they have and go back to it, you'll often be surprised that, they actually need something extra that you hadn't quite thought of, perhaps, or there's something that you're not quite delivering on, or there's something that you don't think is important, but that they really, really value. So I think it's very important to monitor the language, the communications that you have with your customers, be it with email, be it with phone, to actually take that time to jot down some of those words that they're using, or the language or the sentences, because they will tell you what's their fears, what's their values, what's driving them. And that will help you, I think, to understand your customers more. And that's a very non-60-second version of what to do. But I mean, I've written the blog post there. I might just put it back in the chat. I'm just wondering, does anybody else have any more questions? We'll say have any more questions popped up there? Have you seen that people are asking, or?
Also, I can see you've got your blog post. I'm just gonna I do a little trailer for next week while Emma's scouting. So we're gonna do same time next week, 9 p.m. And it's gonna be today's a lot about strategy. Next week is gonna be some last minute tactics to sort of finish strong in December. So for those of you who've got product-based businesses, we are in the absolute peak trading period. Which is why I'm struggling to talk properly this evening. So, and it's really, there's been some interesting trends. We're just coming to the end of Cyber Monday here in the UK. Those of you in the US have got you've got a few more hours at it. But really all the trends are showing that things are sprinting right the way up to Christmas. For those of you who are in service-based businesses, December's traditionally known as being a bit of a crappy month. Because everyone starts going to do nothing but Christmas parties from about the 15th onwards, and it's impossible to get hold of people. I know Denise has got some really strong thoughts on planning your 2016. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the sales, and then Emma's probably going to get revenge and ask loads of mean questions back and give us more insights onto consumer psychology. So that'll be 9 p.m. GMT next week. So it's been great having a second blab. Thank you very much for all the chat and the comments. It's actually really, really great to see so much advice being given. And so, for Marianne, you can go back and scroll through, because while you were talking, there were some amazing ideas.
Yeah.
And so just thank you everyone for your time and attention and your input. For people who are brave enough to jump on the hot seats, that's always awesome. But the chat in the comments is fab too. And yeah, so kind of that's me for now. I'm off to mop up the end of Cyber Monday. Try and make it to midnight to make some tweaks to add campaigns and stuff. There might be a little half an hour power nap going on. And yeah, see you all next week.
Thank you. Thanks, Christina. And again, just to reiterate what Christina's saying, somebody's just
thanks for taking the time to join us.
There's a delayed reaction there, is there? Just again, thanks for joining us. But I just like to flag up there, which is really important point that I didn't get around to making, which is Martin 76 about life events. And this is often a really overlooked important element for any business. There's huge opportunities in life events and in people's lives. Like, for example, religious events, be they holy communions, confirmations, weddings, baptisms, starting school. There's such a variety of life events. And really what I just like to flag up there very quickly is, can your business contribute to any of these life events? Because often we can have core businesses, but often we miss opportunities, we'll say, within the marketplace that we could actually contribute towards. Perhaps you're, I don't know, you have a hotel or whatever it is, and maybe you could offer extra services. And that's a good point by Martin at number 76. I just wanted to say that. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. We didn't get a chance to go through every aspect of the blog. I'd encourage you to read it if you could. I will be doing a course on this in the new year, and maybe if you come back to some blabs, you might get some more information about that. I'll post them at the end. And I'd like to thank everyone, particularly in the chat. There was a lot of really, really good advice from Shannon and Emma and a number of other people, Martin. So thank you all, Josh Rep as well. So thank you all for listening. We're going to do a weekly blab. So Christine is in the hot seat next week, and I will be asking her some naughty questions, just in terms of, some help that we can all get. And we all have our individual areas that we're really happy to share and the expertise that we have with. And, thank you all for listening, and we would love to see you next week. So thanks for listening, everybody. How about you, Denise? Would you like to sign off? Or I think you might have had partially there.
I think you've really covered everything. I just want to say I haven't been able to enter anything in the chat today because it's something to do with the way my PC is configured. But just to say hello to Latif, who is at .rep. So thanks for taking the time to join us. Latif is in my BNI group, so lovely to see you here. And also everybody else who's been part of the Blab and contributed so fantastically to it, and hope that some of you are going to be able to make it back next week.
Yeah, great. And if you have any topics actually that you'd like covered going forward, please actually just make some suggestions there, because we'd be delighted to help you if we can at all. So thank you so much. I'm afraid Hamid was trying to jump in there, but we're going to jump off. So thanks everyone, and we will see you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.